Oh, there we go.
Oh,
So
wow.
here we go. Hi, everyone. I think we're live. Can we get a nod on the chat here if we're live? Can everyone see us? Are we live, people?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. We made it.
Yay.
Yay. I'm so sorry that we had a little technical glitch there and we were well into a flow. We'd done our introductions. Everyone was very excited. So we're going to start this session again. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Sorry for the delay in kicking things off. I am Nate Woodhead. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the Deputy ECD at Virtue Worldwide. We are the creative agency which is powered by Vice Media Group. We work with brands like Coca-Cola, Diageo, Philips, Logitech, all sorts of others. Our aim is to build culture-first comms campaigns which position brands inside of culture and connect them with audiences that they really want to reach. Being part of Vice Media Group means that we have access to incredible audiences and resources through platforms like ID Magazine, Vice News, Refinery 29, all sorts of other verticals we have. And within those platforms, we have communities that we have real-time dialogue with all the time, research groups, insights constantly feeding back and forth. And that's the main reason I decided that Virtue Worldwide was the right creative agency for me to be at. One of my big frustrations throughout my career has always been not having juicy enough access to information or sharp enough insights to be able to really make creative work that matters. And this access to Gen Z audiences, which we have, and millennials too, but we have a real core pool of Gen Z audiences across our different channels, gives us such an interesting perspective on how we can start to shape work and communities and build community brands around different organizations. So a big part of my job is helping brands connect with Gen Z audiences in lots and lots of different ways. Today, we're going to be talking about what Gen Z really thinks and why you should care. You'll be hearing a little bit from me about some of my perspectives, but mostly from this incredible panel that we have together today. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you to the panel. So, Michelle, would you like to kick off?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle. I'm currently the head of community growth at Scale Higher. We're on a mission to help ambitious people accelerate their professional development through guided sprints and one-on-one coaching. And right before that, I was also working at On Deck, which is a startup community that supports a lot of young founders. And I was working with a lot of Gen Z founders there while I was working in special projects. And right before that, I was a founder as well myself. I founded a company called Flick alongside one of my friends, Ravina Anand, and we were a platform that connected female founders and leaders with students from all across the world through meaningful career experiences. And of course, worked with a lot of Gen Z students, as well as some Gen Z founders and young founders from across the world. That was acquired in October of 2021, which is when I joined On Deck. And a bit about me is that I used to be a medical science student. I thought that I was going to be a doctor my entire life, but then ended up getting sucked into starting entrepreneurship events for young founders across North America, and built out Gen Z mental health and entrepreneurship events alongside Headspace and Nike and Bumble while I was in college. And I was super lucky to have that experience, and ended university telling my parents, I don't think I want to be a doctor. I don't think I want to go to school for the next 8 years. I think I want to be a founder. And they're like, why? But it ended up being really, really great. I love my job now. I love working in startups and entrepreneurship, and of course, working with other fellow Gen Z super ambitious people. I am Gen Z myself, on the cusp. I think we're called Zillennials, but lucky to be in this generation. I'll pass it to William.
Hi, everyone. My name is William Pimenta. My pronouns are he and him. I work for Meta. I work in the gaming partnerships team. So I work with gaming influencers. My job is to help influencers to build community on Facebook and Instagram around gaming. Some of my creators and the influencers that I work with, they are Gen Z, and they're building a very diverse community. I love working for Meta. It's such an inclusive workplace and platform. I love that they support all of my ideas and I feel so included. And the reason that I say that is before joining the gaming world, I thought this was not for me as an LGBTQIA person. And I was like, okay, if I'm to accept a job working in gaming, I want to be the change maker. So I've been able to run a lot of projects around diversity, inclusion, and equity in gaming. And I can talk more about that later in the session, but so excited to be here. Thank you very much. Abby, that's over to you.
Thanks, William. Hi, everyone. My name's Abby Bear. I'm the CSO of an advertising agency called Crispin Porter Bogusky. We've been in business since 1989. We've won Agency of the Decade multiple times through Ad Age and Adweek, as well as Interactive Agency, sounds very old nowadays, Interactive Agency of the Year with Cannes Lions. We work for brands like Kraft, I've written them down so I can remember, Kraft, Burger King, we work with Mini, Domino's Pizza, Truth.com in terms of the crusade against smoking, and obviously Diageo as well. I love working for CPB. CPB is an agency that's constantly under reinvention, especially after the last couple of years where we've all gone through shared trauma together. We've re-looked at ourselves in terms of our business and our practices. How do we think about engaging with younger people? How do we think about young talent? How do we think about bringing the best people back into the advertising industry? Because advertising and marketing is only successful and is only beneficial and relevant when you can actually speak to people in a way that matters to them, in a way that they are represented properly, and in a way that represents culture. So one of the things that we're doing at the moment is we've created a infrastructure where we're 100% remote across the globe to create the world's largest creative network. And also we are looking at reworking the way that advertising agencies remunerate and reward their talent, because without talent, there is nothing. So for instance, things like when we win pitches, making sure that people who work on the pitches actually get rewarded through money out the back of that. And in terms of like actually making people equitable partners in our agency today in order to create a new model for the future.
Abby, you've set us off on an interesting track. So we met and talked about what we're going to talk about today, and we found a few themes that we thought were interesting from our perspectives to open up to discuss. And Abby launching into discussions there about what Bukowski are doing around careers and benefit for people in work. I'm going to switch up our order and go straight in on Gen Z careers. So Abby, given what you've just said, do you have a point of view on what you think Gen Z want out of their careers in what you're seeing in your organization?
So I'm going to start, but I'm also going to say I really want Michelle to talk about this, because Michelle and I have talked about this and she is definitely the expert in this space. But I can talk about what I've seen from my own personal experience, especially over the last couple of years, just within the advertising industry. And then Michelle, you can tell me if I'm wrong or whatever afterwards. But from my standpoint, one of the things that, from an operational standpoint, specifically within the advertising industry, I watched, and I don't think I'm that old yet, but I watched a lot of young people really struggle in terms of the way that advertising was treating younger people or entry-level people as they started to come into the industry. And I think that that's a real fundamental misunderstanding by the advertising industry of what talent is today. And we talked about this as a group prior to this meeting, where one of the things that I truly realize about younger people, Gen Z people specifically, is that they come from a world that is vastly more sophisticated, informed, and competitive than, say, the likes of me when I was growing up. And the industry itself has created this sort of extremely hierarchical structure, probably for profitability's sake, where a lot of younger people come into the industry and essentially are find themselves stagnating because they're not actually able to use the contemporary tools and skill sets that they actually have. They're actually really beneficial in a world today. Not only that, they're asked to move to cities that are extremely expensive, that they probably can't afford to live in based on the salaries that they're on. And also they're asked to work hours that aren't necessarily actually in anything other than arbitrary to what a business expects or needs based on previous status quos. So one of the things that we've been doing is we've been spending a lot of time taking really critical thought around how can we create something that is actually, if in any sense and mechanic, something that actually makes a more equitable environment and a more transparent environment for younger people to come into a workplace where they actually immediately feel like their talents and their skills and their understanding is valued, and create an equitable environment that starts to break down a lot of those barriers that stop people from wanting to have jobs in the advertising industry. For instance, there's tons of talent that live all over the States, that live all over the world, that would be amazing for us to be able to have, from building out diversity, building out like different perspectives in our company. But the fact of the matter is, if you're located in one specific place, it immediately reduces your pool and stops certain people from being able to even access that business in the first place. So becoming entirely decentralized was a very strategic point of view for us in terms of actually building out a space that anyone who wanted to work for us had the same chance as anyone else. And that's something we've replicated across a number of different other policies that we run within our company. But I could talk about this forever. I'll let Michelle talk for a second, unless you wanted to say something, Nate.
I was just going to suggest, Michelle, can I'd love your take on this, but based on what employers can do. So can you talk about it from a lens of what employers can do to make these positive things happen?
Yeah, I think so. I wrote a post on this actually on LinkedIn, and it resonated with a lot of people. It was like a very short post. All I said was, as Gen Z's build careers, we're prioritizing 3 things over all else. 1 is working for mission-aligned companies and teams. 2 is being truly valued every day, which I think Abby was talking about. And 3 is doing fulfilling work that connects with our personal mission and long-term goals. So I think 1, saying working for mission-aligned companies and teams, I think that's, from an employer's perspective, it's really, really important to showcase what you stand for. And I think Abby kind of touched on that in terms of equity and saying you're going to be able to have equal opportunity no matter where you are across the world. So for example, the previous company that I was at, On Deck, we said that straight out the gate. It's all over the websites, all over the careers page, that no matter where you live across the world, we will consider hiring you, and we will pay you what you're worth no matter where you are across the world. And also now more than ever, I think Gen Z is a very, very mission-driven generation. And I think that in the past, I think some of like I said, I'm on the cusp of Gen Z and millennial, and some of the older generations, the number 1 priority when entering the workforce was financial stability. So they would work for really large companies and corporations that have mission statements, but you don't feel like they are adding to that mission statement every day, that you're driving towards that mission every day. And I think that's where the disconnect is now. I told Abby earlier a few days ago that I've helped at least 10 of my friends leave the corporate world to join startups. And the disconnect for them was that they didn't feel like they were moving the needle, where I feel as though earlier generations, such as my parents, they say to me all the time, why don't you just join a large corporate company that's been there for centuries? You'll have a great job. You'll have a great salary.
Job.
But that's not right. That's just not the priority these days. We want to feel like if we're climate activists, we want to work with a company that has it all over their page, that every single day they're working towards the mission of like climate action. And we want to work for those companies. So employers really have to be clear about what they stand for, and not this vague statement or not what they think people want to hear. It has to be something that we're actively working towards this every day. Our objectives and our KPIs are associated with this mission. And then 2, being truly valued every day. Exactly what Abby was saying. A lot of the time, I think, especially at really, really large corporate companies, if you're coming in at entry level, you're treated like you're young and don't know anything. where I think we were talking about this a few days ago as well, that this is one of the most informed generations. We grew up with access to all kinds of information in the palm of our hand. I grew up with an iPhone, right? Like I can read anything that I want. I listen to podcasts all day, every day, consume the news, consume current events. I feel like I'm much more informed than a lot of other generations have been, and we are very lucky to have that. So going into the workforce, I feel as though we are able to add a lot more value than a lot of times people are giving us credit for. So being truly valued every day. And to the third point, doing fulfilling work that connects with our personal mission. So for me at the company that I'm at now, this is like a great thing that they did before they hired me. They said, every month we'll have a check-in with you about what you want to be doing and why, how this relates to your career goals within our company and beyond. I've been super open with them. I want to be a founder again one day. And these are the types of areas that I really, really want to grow in. Despite my age, they treat me like I'm one of them. I'm part of the founding team. I'm part of all of the conversations there. And that was a large reason why I would rather work with a startup that cares a lot more about me, my career growth, what I want to be doing in the future, and how my day-to-day work truly impacts the overall mission that we're working towards, than working at a corporate company where maybe I could be making like 2 times, 3 times more money, but I don't feel that way every day. And it's this like inner feeling that every Gen Z really wants.
We took. Oh, sorry, Nate. Go on.
Michelle, Billy's asked a question in the chat, which could become expansive in response, but he's asking if he thinks that we'll see the death of big company. And I think that there's an interesting thing happening, right, where the stability of those big organizations is still very appealing to lots of people. But there is a sea change has to happen within these organizations, Abby, like you're talking to, which is about how they reinvent and revolutionize around equity and all of the things that really matter for people. William, I think you have a point of view on creating a new world of work for Gen Z people. So do you want to talk a little bit about it from your point of view and how you're reinventing careers through gaming?
Yeah, for sure. And one thing that Michelle said was she was like, "Oh, I want to be a founder one day of my company." And then if we look to the creators and the gamers, they are the CEOs. They are the founders of their own company. So like the gaming influencers that I work with, they started their own company in their bedroom, streaming content and playing games. And this became a big business. So I am Brazilian. So in Brazil, a lot of people in my generation, I'm a millennium, when they were kids, they wanted to be footballers. Not me, by the way. I hate football. But they wanted to be footballers, right? Nowadays, they want to be gamers because the access to gaming, it's more diverse. You can play gamings on your computer. You can play games phone, especially in countries like Brazil, right? So mobile games are extremely important and extremely big. With that, this unlocked a new opportunity and new work for the Gen Z. So now in the gaming world, you can be a pro player. You can play the game Free Fire professionally and earn money and change the life of your family. You can also play games at your bedroom with like VR headsets or other things and start building your business from that. One thing that I love about social media and platform that gave the people the possibility to change the way they work. So they are the CEOs. They create their company, they create their culture, and they start hiring people, and everybody it's moving towards the same goal. I'm super excited about this generation. I'm super excited about the businesses that the gaming creators are creating and the opportunity that the platforms are giving, right? So you can be a gaming creator, you can monetize on all platforms and make a living, and you can go the extra mile. So I have a creator, his name is Bruno Playhard. He's a CEO of a big company, his own company. He owns a esports team. He's actually being recognized by Forbes, by 30s under 30. And he's building a massive business. And now he's investing in NFT. And everything is started in his bedroom. There's so many new careers that the Gen Z is creating that they are creating that we never thought it would exist.
I'm just so overjoyed that someone's called Bruno Playhard. It's such a
You
fantastic.
know him?
No, I
Oh,
don't.
so
You said
you
it, and
knew
I
him.
was like, "What an incredible, incredible name." There's something interesting that we're all alluding towards here, which is all of these bits of conversation we're having are pushing against norms. So naturally, there is discourse happening around things feeling uncomfortable, things not being the norm. And when you start looking at this from a point of view of what you were touching on there, William, around how you're essentially talking about creative power has gone from top down mindsets to like this trickle up economy of people being able to be industrious. There is power in ideas in the hands of many people, and the access to technology and platforms for people to be able to live this through and build it into companies worth huge amounts of money, to employ friends based on shared value systems, all of this stuff happening. And I think that it gets you to an interesting point of view around core values and the value shift, and some of that discourse we're talking about between what was always done and what is happening now around us. There's the core triggers for me in lots of ways are the value shifts that have happened within this cohort of people. So maybe Abby, what's your point of view on what the core values we're looking at now as Gen Z tropes are coming through?
That's such a huge question. I think like one of the things, and Michelle touched on this earlier, this is something that I'm super fascinated about at the moment, is, you know, when you grow up with access to information in the way that Gen Z has grown up, you become incredibly sophisticated very quickly in terms of recognizing what matters to you and sorting the wheat from the chaff, basically, in terms of what is real, what is not real, what is opinion, what is fact. And I think that often older generations don't give enough credibility to Gen Z for that incredible sophistication, and subsequently out of the back of that, pragmatism in the way that they approach life. It's interesting hearing William and Michelle talk about this, because the thing that I see here is that like this I'm not even going to call it a push away from big company, but this reliance on big company is irrelevant nowadays, because the fact of the matter is, when you grow up in a space where there's so much information and so much turmoil, the only thing that you can rely on is yourself. And the biggest value that you have for yourself and the people around you and the world around you is truth. Truth is the only thing that matters. Authenticity is the only thing that matters. And that in essence, in everything that I've seen in the work that I've done, is that truth is the guiding principle that exists amongst all of these people. And so whenever they are faced with these sorts of situations where you have, well, you should do that, that's the way it's always been done, they'll immediately call bullshit on it, because that's not necessarily truth, and that's not necessarily authenticity. And one of the things, and Nate, we were talking about this the other day, we see this not just in terms of feelings and structure, but we see this in action as well. We see the fact that in unprecedented numbers, younger people are moving away from traditional institutions like the church, because what the church says and what the church does, especially in America, are two very different things. And that younger people are seeing this as a real challenge in terms of their key priority or their key value, which is authenticity. And they're also expecting businesses and brands to be significantly more authentic in the way that they produce products through innovation, how they represent people in the work that they put out in the world around them. So for me, when I think about like the core value that dictates and defines Gen Z, it's all about truth. It's all about truth and authenticity.
If I may touch on that, in my opinion as well, it's similar to what you said, but belonging is extremely important, right? In the workplace, but even when you're like watching content. For example, when growing up, I didn't see many LGBTQIA people in television. Now, the Gen Z, they have a vast number of content that they can watch and feel represented. One of our biggest gaming creators on Facebook Gaming is Samira Close. She's a drag queen, and she's a powerhouse. She is inspiring the next generation of LGBTQIA streamers in Brazil. And it takes one person to be the change, right? So you connect with your community, you find people that are like you, and you're touched by their content and you want to be like that, and you have an inspiration in your life. So if you're watching content or even on workplace, belonging is extremely important. My manager at Meta, she's an LGBTQIA. Never in a million years I thought I would have someone like me managing me and helping build a business and give people the opportunity to connect and create community.
Totally. But do you not think as well that that is in essence also part of truth and authenticity, being able to bring your true self, being able to represent yourself in its truest and most authentic form, to be celebrated and accepted for everything that you are, is also part of that fundamental point of truth, like bringing more truth to the world, bringing more acceptance of the truth and acceptance of what reality actually is.
Billy's just asked a question here about belonging. So we've been talking about it in various different guises, I think, whether that's about being part of a gaming community, creating equitable spaces at work, or making the right space in your own life to be able to create something that invites your community in. I think that's an interesting segue into a topic we touched on the other day around representation and truth at work. And I'd love to get your point of view, each of you, from your respective communities, about the emphasis you see in how companies are supporting the needs of LGBTQIA plus people and the connection to Gen Z's, the dialogue around gender identity, all of these pretty divisive narratives that are going on. I'd love to get your take on that. So, Abby, how are you seeing that play out? Oh, Michelle, actually, I think.
Yeah,
Michelle,
don't go for me again. Go for some.
If I'm being honest, I feel like a lot of the large companies, I don't know if you all agree, but I feel like there's a lot of performative acts that are done by a lot of the large companies. And I still think that that's happening now. For example, in Pride Month, when every company turns their logo to the Pride flag and they're like, we're supporting you for a month. And then I feel like after that it's over. And I've heard that a lot from even my LGBTQIA plus friends who are working for these companies. They're like, we're celebrated for a month because they feel like they have to. And then the conversation is dropped for another year. And so I don't know if I'm the best person to know how to fix this. I don't think there is a very, very clear solution right now, but I think it brings back to the same question that Billy was talking about. Is there a death of the big company? I don't think there'll ever be a true death of the big company, just because the way that society works, we're going to need to have all these big companies to offer the services that we use day to day. But I think in the next 10 years, there is a revolution as Gen Z grows into these leadership roles and brings the truth and authenticity with them into the core values and starts to rebuild the values of these larger companies. Hopefully, we're going to see a more true and authentic way that companies are able to integrate diversity, equity, inclusion without it feeling like it's just a part of what they have to do as a large company, as a part of politics. I don't know if you have other thoughts on this.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about it, because one of the things that I often think about is the retention of status quo by older generations in quote unquote big company. And I think that that's one of the things that's going to really cut successful large companies or successful companies from less successful companies in the future, because I think that it isn't just on the shoulders of Gen Z to reform the way that companies think about inclusivity or DE&I or whatever you want to call it. I think you absolutely have to put the expectation of building a more inclusive business on the shoulders of individuals who haven't necessarily grown up in that environment, because everyone needs to keep on learning and everyone needs to keep on getting better and everyone needs to keep on thinking about how to include people. So I don't want this to be something that starts in a few years' time. I want this to be something that we can put pressure on people today. And I don't think it's necessarily a particularly big thing. I mean, like, one of the things that we talked about the other day, Michelle, was the fact that just even being able to start meetings by using pronouns, so people feel that they're being represented correctly in meetings, such a small thing, but has such incredible repercussions in the way that people feel and are represented in the workplace, makes such a difference, and I hope would start a trickle effect in terms of ways that people engage with each other. And I actually think that a lot of people think that these have to be huge things, but actually it's small day-to-day things that really make the difference.
Yeah, because what I was thinking of is, I think a lot of companies have things like diversity, equity, and inclusion galas, because they're like, where you have to prove to everyone that we're going to raise money and that we support diversity, equity, and inclusion. But it's not, I think it's not about these galas. It's not about these events. It's about, is leadership speaking to people who are in this community? Are they saying, what do you need from us day to day? Are they having honest conversations and actually implementing little bits of change? Just like, can we start off the meeting with our pronouns? Or do you need this? Do you need that? How can we make your day easier? How can we make your everyday better for you, and to make everyone feel included, instead of this like performative one time a year, we have a huge event and a massive gala and we showcase everybody who's in this community in our company. Instead of that, can we do something that's real and changes and makes like step changes every single day that actually changes the culture of the company?
Yeah. And for me, like, that also sits alongside being mindful enough at senior leadership positions to bring in more diversity. That's the reason why we end up with these galas. That's the reason why we end up with Pride Month, like rainbow washing, is because there isn't enough diversity at senior leadership positions for people to be able to speak out on behalf of broader mindsets. And I think that that's something that has to change too.
I feel incredibly fortunate to be a gay man in such a senior position in a company which I would consider to be radically diverse and inclusive. We have an incredible array of people working in our organization across all sorts of different business verticals. And you know what I'm super proud of? Everyone is still, we are not diverse enough. We are not, because it's a constant thing. It can't be done overnight, and we will never stop having to push forward with these things. And I think no one's ever going to reach the day that it's fixed. No one's ever going to reach the point where, oh, that's that done. And I think this is the problem when you start to look at things like Pride Month and things that start to feel performative, is it's the long-term commitments required, and understanding how you can create an environment where this is an always on narrative versus something that ebbs and flows. You also can't just look at the few diverse people in your organization and ask them what you need to do to fix the problem. Get consultants in. There are some incredible organizations who specialize in helping people to transform their businesses, who employ people who come from these cohorts, who are there on their hour, on their pound, to be able to be of service to you. And I think the reliance on your own workforce to fix your problems at a organizational level is really challenging. Guys, we're running out of time. And William, I really wanted to talk to you a little bit about how people are inventing their own spaces within the gaming world that are built from their own equity and perspectives. But we're going to run out of time. I have 40 seconds because of the late start. So I've got a few key points that we've talked about today that I would just love to leave everyone with takeaways. So 30 seconds. Clear from the discussion today, Gen Z is different to any other generation that's ever come before them, and they are playing that out and living it truly. Success looks so different for Gen Z cohorts. Ideas of sexuality and gender look completely different. Mental health is incredibly important and a top priority. Don't give your soul to your job. Live in more positive ways for your own life. Self-exploration. We're going to run out of time. 3, 2, 1. Are we done?